Welcome back to another episode of the HUSLA Podcast. Guys, thanks for tuning in as always. We appreciate it very much. Today we are sitting down with Dan Godeassi from Evolve Sports Medicine, the boss man himself.
Dan the man.
Thank you.
Dan,
Excited.
Dan is, actually played a pretty pivotal role in, I guess, all of our developments over the years as a referring practitioner for us and friend.
Absolutely.
We got you on the fucking body.
I made it.
Yes. So Dan came in this morning and we thought we would smack two birds with one stone and do a little assessment on my hamstring and also knock out a podcast, which, to be honest with you, I feel like we should have done much sooner. Dan, you've got way too many achievements and accolades for me to introduce you properly, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on, boys. I love what you guys have done at this place. It's bloody awesome to see how that's grown over the years, and excited to be in a potty with you guys, friends and colleagues. So I suppose a bit about me, if the listeners haven't seen me or heard of me before. I'm a physiotherapist by trade, but I don't think the professional title really quite does the justice for what I've done and how I approach things. It sort of sets up expectations that I think really need to change in the industry, which we'll probably get into. But my background, I suppose, so I've studied to be a physio. Prior to that, I've done personal training and strength and conditioning. I love to help get rid of pain and solve injuries quick and for good. That's something I'm obsessive about, is trying to figure out how can we do it quicker, how can we do it better. That's kind of me in a nutshell, I suppose. I can go into depths of things, but that's relatable enough.
It's impressive. And along, I guess, your journey, let's start with that. Let's go to, I always like to go to the beginning, like when it began.
The origin or superhero backstory or the villain arc.
Like the passion, the fire, where did it come from? Where did it start to get into this field?
Yeah, great question. I would say way back in high school, when I was embarking actually on a journey to become a professional swimmer. I had big dreams and ambitions to make it to the Olympics. Unfortunately, that didn't quite pan out, but it was a very fun and tough and good learning journey along the way. But as part of that journey, I've always been very obsessive and really wanting to learn how things work and know absolutely everything about a topic of interest that I can. So part of my journey was how to maximize human performance. How can I recover faster? How can I get fitter, stronger, better at my sport and my craft? So I was learning lots about strength and conditioning principles, strength training principles, how to get more powerful with my starts and my turns and all of that back in as early as maybe year 7, year 8. Also looking into...
That's really young.
Yeah. Also looking into nutritional things as well, because that was a huge part of my backstory as well. As back then I just wasn't eating enough. I was falling asleep in classes regularly because I just didn't have the calories that I needed to keep my energy levels more constant throughout the day. So I was looking at, all right, well, what nutritional approaches are going to help enhance my ability to get more out of training, recover faster, perform better when I need to. And then that led into, as inevitably any athlete sort of starts to encounter, like you get injured, you get pain, you get problems that you need to work around and solve. And I thought it would be a pretty cool thing to do is become a physio, because then I can blend my passion and an obsession of human performance with solving pain and injuries. And I've always loved solving difficult and complex problems. So I figured layering those two things together, like, it just makes the problem bigger and harder to solve, which I jumped at. So moving forwards, by time sort of year 10 rolled around, like, I was already trying to tailor my subjects towards getting into physio. After high school, I had a gap year to really pursue my swimming career, and that was awesome because I managed to qualify for nationals and take that to a reasonably high level. And then after that, went all in on the academic side of things. So I suppose maybe not a super well-known fact, but I actually started in biomedicine instead of a Bachelor of Science, which was an interesting degree. Awesome if you want to become like a biochemist or a doctor. But when I knew I wasn't doing much around the genetic and pharmacology side of things, I transferred into science because there was more flexibility in that. So I picked up a crap load of physiology subjects, neuroscience subjects, and even a few actual like coaching science subjects. And alongside that, because that was very academic and not practical, I'm like, this isn't going to work when I'm working with people. Like, I need to know how to coach people, how to train people, how to get them fit, how to get them strong, to pass on this knowledge I've learned and put into theory myself over the years into other people. So I was doing swimming coaching, personal training and tutoring alongside of that to work with people and understand what makes them tick. How can I help them get better outcomes that they're looking for, whether it be through any of those means. So that was sort of like a parallel journey, which I did some private PT on the side while studying, and then moved into, I suppose, a bit more sports performance, a bit more strength and conditioning orientated stuff, where I suppose it's a bit more goals driven, event driven, rather than just general health and fitness. I did an honours year as well, where I just went crazy for 1 year learning all how research basically works, which I thought was sort of a means to an end initially to get into physio. Not that you have to do it that way, but that's just the pathway that it took me, which looking back on it has actually been invaluable, because the critical reasoning skills and the ability to really dissect information and research to another level that most people don't quite have that knowledge of how things are actually stitched together to be produced into a paper has been really valuable to filter what information I'm taking on board and what stuff I'm being cautious with a grain of salt, so that now that I've finished my doctor degree of physio, I'm still trying to learn everything I can. I've done as many courses as possible.
Oh yeah.
Never stop learning.
Yeah, that's it. Like, always got to have that student mindset, because there's always something you learn. And one of the best things, I suppose, about graduating is now you get to put all of that theory into practice, and you actually learn from every patient that you see. You start to see different. It's just like coaching. You learn something different about different people and what makes them tick and what works and what doesn't, and different tactics or ways to approach a problem to help get the outcomes they're looking for. And as I suppose I've probably rambled enough about, like, I'm obsessive about this. Like, I don't sleep because I'm thinking, how can I do that better? How can I do this? How can I solve that? And that's, yeah, now that I've been doing, it's been a while, I think physio for like 10 years, but coaching people for 20 plus, I'd say. Yeah, it's been a journey.
I think we met early on in that, or at least early on in the, probably 10 years ago when you were at Sandy.
That's right, yep.
How long ago was that?
I think you're about right. It was like pre-COVID, like 2018, maybe. Yeah, back at Hammer House as well.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember.
So did you start out working under, did you start out working under someone else, or did you start your business from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely didn't start straight away. My mindset going out of uni was, I want to be in an environment that sets me up with a range of different people and populations, so that I'm once again just getting a really good like learning experience, and a place that has lots of really good professional development opportunities, both in-house, externally, and also the team that I was working with. So I actually started my journey at Sandringham Sports Physio. Shout out to them, Brandon Cam and Rob Donatis. Thank you, because they've got to be grateful for the people that's sort of set you up for where you are today, because I'm trying my best to stand on the shoulder of giants. So yeah, that was phenomenal. Like, awesome team, amazing people and patients that I got to work with. Sporting opportunities were unreal. The in-house PD and them being somewhat flexible, although hesitant with me doing a stupid amount of professional development externally. But it's really set me up. It's really set me up well.
Yeah. And did you do your homework as to kind of where you were thinking about working? Because I know obviously a lot of people out there that might be new grads and stuff might be thinking, you know, just go get a job. But maybe, I guess, tell us how you went about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, at least for me, from my values and what I wanted to get out of work, working in the right spot was more important than just jumping into whatever job I could. So I almost had like a bit of I may have actually had a physical list, but I sort of like wrote down a list of like key things that were important for me and my development that I wanted to get out of a job place.
Yep.
And somewhat flipped the script when it came to the interviews of, okay, I know they're going to ask me all these questions and I'll answer it as best I can, but I've got questions for them as well. Like, what's your professional development like? Like, who's on your team? What are their interests? What patient populations do you see? How do you approach your treatment, your rehab and your care? What growth opportunities are there, et cetera, et cetera. So just as they were interviewing me, I was interviewing them and like, yep, that sounds good, or nah, that sounds terrible. I've got plenty of those stories. But like I said, for me, it was worth not rushing into it. I was lucky enough that I could financially, but finding the right spot, I'm really happy with what I did do, and it paid off.
Yep, unreal.
What sort of things didn't align with you at the time, or probably still now?
100%. You quickly start to learn in the industry how a lot of businesses are very KPI driven, just from a financial and a numbers point of view, which is many new graduate or soon to be graduate clinicians of any sort, we don't care so much about the finance side of things. We care about helping people and getting results. So when they come at you with, okay, you've got expectations to see people this number of times per week for 8 weeks straight, and you need to build this number of revenue, you need to sign people up to these programs, you need to sell all of these products, and they're not even mentioning anything about like great care and doing what's right by the individual. It's like, I didn't get into healthcare for this.
Yeah.
I want to help people achieve healthier and better lives, not build the crap out of them.
I think that's obviously what, you know, we've seen even with working with lots of clients and them saying, oh, I saw this physio, I'm going to have to stop coaching because they've signed me up to a program and I need to come and see them, you know, twice per week for the next 8 weeks or whatever it is. And I guess it's just frustrating because, you know, what's been really great about working with you and with Marcus is that we can actually collaborate and work together, and we've got the same goal, and that doesn't need them to stop coaching or stop training. So yeah.
Just a little side point on that, and Dan, you can answer this from your experience as well. How many times have you had to tell somebody that you have to actually stop training in your whole time as a physio?
Never. I actually can, like, more times I actually have to tell them, like, and convince them, dare I say, like, no, you need to continue training. Don't stop.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same. So there's probably hundreds or thousands, I don't know how many patients between us both that we've seen, and you pretty much, never say never. There's some circumstances where, but at least from our experience, the odds are heavily in your favour to continue training. Yeah, 100%.
If there's a will, there's a way. Even people who are, God forbid, bedridden and in hospital with something really serious, you can still do some mental imagery and rehearsal of things, and that's been shown to have some beneficial effect as opposed to doing nothing. There's always something. There's always a workaround. So that's almost an immediate red flag of a poor practitioner, clinician, or business, is if they say that you need to stop and invest all in our program, and they're not even talking about how to keep you in what you actually love and that you care and want to get back to. Go somewhere else immediately. Do not waste any more time and money with them.
Yep.
What are some other red flags?
Other red flags, the other big one, and this is really difficult for patients, because we love certainty. We don't like the unknowns and wishy-washy stuff, but where clinicians can say with absolute certainty it's 100% that, or this is exactly the answer, and they can't navigate the grey areas in between, or at least be truthful with that, quite often that clinician is probably a bit naive and undereducated, and it can introduce risk into your care where they might be leading you unbeknown to them quite often, down the wrong path, and then you've spent weeks, months, or longer trying to do something that hasn't worked. And then when you figure it out, like, this just isn't going anywhere. I'm going around in cycles. It keeps flaring up. This issue is just not getting any better. I'm going to go and get a second opinion. And then you realize something completely different. But they'll talk honestly in terms of, look, it's most likely this. And if it's not that, then we're thinking X and Y, etc. And that pathway looks like this. They can at least discuss with a degree of clarity around what those different pathways could look like, what things are. They talk almost in probabilities rather than in certainty, but they have that confidence around what that journey looks like ahead and how to navigate things if they don't go to plan, rather than the red flag of, it's exactly this, you got to do it my way, my method, my magic hands, or whatever it might be. If you go and do anything else, then it's just not going to work and you're going to stuff yourself up.
And then that also circles back to, I think, a big kind of point there is also imaging, and how we, I guess, traditionally, imaging was, you know, the thing. It was like, go get a scan, and then whatever's on that scan is the thing that you treat, and you follow the textbook treatment protocol, and it's this, this, and this, and the timeline's exactly the same for everyone. And, you know, what we know now is, like, you get a painful shoulder, you get a pain-free shoulder, the chances of having that same condition show up on the pain-free shoulder is nearly just as high. So can we actually say with certainty that these things are causing the pain? I think that's a massive one. And I think the shift, I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, but there is a shift in the industry towards less and less of that. And it's, I think, resulting in better care, but it's still so difficult to pull patients away from that thinking, because it's one thing for clinicians to be in that mindset, but then it's another thing for that to get delivered out to every single Gen Pop person on this earth.
Absolutely. It's a really challenging thing in the industry, and just psychologically as humans, because we do love certainty, and we love sort of being able to so-called like pin the tail on the donkey of, that's my problem, that's the issue, that's what needs to be fixed. And just as you've alluded to, like, we've got so much research now, overwhelming amounts, that you can have the ugliest looking scan on the planet, but may absolutely have no pain or problems or issues whatsoever. They've shown that across pretty much every joint in the body. And a way to think about it that's maybe a bit more relatable is, just like we get wrinkles and grey hairs, we have changes happening on the inside of our joints, of our tendons, of our muscles over time, but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to cause pain, problems, or issues. There are some things that makes it a little bit more at risk, but that's only like 1 to 5% of things that, if that's a concern, it should be pretty obvious just from talking about it and assessing things that, hey, we need to have a scan to have a look. But when GPs are still quite commonly, because it's one of the sort of tools in their clinical toolkit, not quite sure what this is, let's go and get a scan, because they don't have necessarily the depth of training and skill to assess things properly without needing a scan. It does feed into that narrative of, ooh, I need a scan, there's something wrong with my joint or my issue, maybe I need surgery, maybe there's, maybe exercise or rehab or treatment or whatever it is can't work for me because there's a structure that needs to be fixed, which is 95% of the time just not the case.
And there's papers out there that show the populations that do get scans actually in some cases end up doing worse. Longer recovery times, higher pain scores, all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So
big psychological parts
huge.
of that.
My shoulder scans were showing bursitis, and they always have. And
it means you've been training well.
All right.
You go and look at any tennis player, they're going to have a degree of bursitis or rotator cuff related issues. Quite often it's a twofold. Actually, probably the best example I reckon is looking at the patella tendons, so the knee tendon of NBA players. On a scan, they are probably the most hideous looking tendons on the planet. Yet they are also the highest performing tendons on the planet, because they can run and jump and dunk like no one else can.
On hard ground as well.
So exactly. So if the scan was all of the picture, then they should just be broken and crippled with pain, but they're not. They're performing at the pinnacle of human performance. So it tells us that, hey, the scans don't equate directly to what your performance and your capability is, nor does it also mean that just because there's change in a scan that you should be crippled or held back from pain. Scans are, I wouldn't say useless, they're strategic, but they're a very, very small part of the picture.
Do you have a framework around kind of when to and when not to get a scan, or when you would advise to and not to get a scan?
Absolutely. To keep it relatively and maybe oversimplified, something that I've been taught that's generally held true is where if a scan, if there's, say you're something that you're suspicious of that you can't quite test to the level of precision that getting a scan then is going to give you that extra bit of precision and say, hey, it's probably ruled in that it's this and ruled out that it's that. If that changes what you're going to do with the individual, then a scan can be useful. If it's not changing what you're going to do with an individual, then it's really not required, even if it helps you rule things in and out a little bit more. And one of the biggest things that's hard to get across to the patient, as well as quite often they want that precision. They think, oh, but wouldn't it be good to just go and get a scan anyway, so then we can see definitively, rule this in, rule that out. And it's overwhelmingly no, because quite often that wastes more time, wastes more money, can reveal extra things that then plants little seeds of ideas up in our head that makes us worry about things or concerned about things, or start to think this might not be as effective as I might have thought, even if you're told, actually, these things, we don't need to worry about them. And that's sort of the study that you're talking about, where people who've been revealed a scan versus people who haven't, they can increase their recovery time by, I think it was like 12 weeks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
3 months just by knowing the result, which doesn't actually change any of their management. So say you're worried, okay, there could be cancer, or this could be a broken bone or something serious that maybe does need a cast or some surgical management or some medical management, something different, then a scan's really important. The other times that I've found scans to be helpful and important is when you're trying to progress rehab at a speed where you're expecting to be held back by biology. A classic example of that is stress fractures. With stress fractures, you don't want to push people back too soon just because they feel good, particularly if the bones are barely healed. So that's where sometimes it is important to get a scan to appreciate the structure underneath. But that links back into my first point of that changes your management, because if it's still broken, you're not going to run on a broken bone. If it's not broken, you can start working towards running.
Yeah. So I guess for the listeners out there, like if you have an injury, the first port of call should not be scan.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Or doctor.
No.
Yeah.
They
Doctor.
love
Yeah.
saying stop
Yeah.
training.
Stop training.
To be frank, like GPs, they're brilliant and they've got so many things that they need to cover and assess for. But because of that, it sort of makes them a little bit, although they are a specialty profession, they're sort of a jack of all trades but a master of none in a sense. So they're like the gatekeeper of the medical world. Now, the good news is to see good practitioners like yourself, myself, other people out there, you don't have to have a GP referral to go and see us. So you might as well start with a high quality option, understand things right, get started on the first foot, rather than the classic example of, oh, I've had this shoulder pain, I'll go and see the GP. The GP's looked at it, they're like, it looks like it's shoulder pain. Let's give you a scan. They'll give you a scan, maybe some medications to take as well. Then that scan result's not going to come back for them for 2-3 weeks. Then you go back and see the GP. Yep, medication's helped a bit or not really. Still there, still a problem. I've stopped training. Looks like there's bursitis and a rotator cuff tear or issue. Maybe go and see this shoulder surgeon and specialist. Yeah, keep resting it. Okay. Another 2-3 weeks down the track of booking in and actually seeing them, and they look at it and they go, could do surgery or could not, maybe need rehab, go and see someone for that. At that point, you've already wasted 4 to 8 weeks of doing nothing useful to solve the issue, and you've just been delaying your care, delaying results.
Regressing.
and resting, so you're not as fit. The issue is probably more sort of like chronic and set in, which means it's going to take double, triple, 4 times as long to get better. Whereas if you started with the right professional at the start, it might have been as simple as, hey, let's give you a few exercises, we can do a bit of treatment, keep training, but here's how I want you to modify things so you're not missing out completely. You probably would have solved it within that same time frame and cost less money.
Yeah.
And then the absolute, like, not even worst case scenario, just like the actual then option is for the practitioner, if they do believe, like if there's a, clear mechanism of injury, you may be suspecting, an ACL or something that, I guess probably not an ACL, you'd be able to probably pick that up in clinic, but something that you can't pick up in clinic, and you think it's worth getting a scan, you'll tell them.
Exactly.
A good practitioner will tell you to get a scan if they think that you need one.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you not to for no reason. So,
and they'd give you good reasons why the scan's useful and how it's going to change your care and your management, rather than just blanketly, I'm not quite sure, let's figure this out with a scan. It's and this is how you should write referrals as well for scans, because the person who's reporting it on the other end, they've got no context to what this person's coming in for. They're just looking at some black and white images on a screen and trying to make sense of it. So you really should, with a scan, write, all right, here's what I'm suspecting or what I'm looking for. Please look for that and report on that when you look at the image for this person. And if anything almost not expected or not relating to what you're trying to investigate pops up, you can almost disregard that unless it's really out of the blue. Oh my gosh, there's a tumor here. I was not expecting that, but yeah, probably should investigate.
So, like, kind of going back, or it fits into this conversation as well, but obviously with how GPs or some clinicians speak with their patients of like essentially very fear-mongering language, lots of labels. What kind of impact can that have on someone's, I guess, psychology and experience with their pain, and then also the whole rehabilitation process as well?
Oh, this is...
It's a heavy, loaded question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But like, and there's studies to back this up as well. Like sometimes the advice that is given to the individual is more debilitating. And I specifically say debilitating in the sense that it causes a physical disability more than the actual original injury, issue or pain does. The classic example I would say that I've experienced too many times to count is where a surgeon has told a patient, oh, I would never run again if I was you, because that's going to wear your joints out and then you'll need a knee replacement and you'll never be able to do X, Y, and Z. And they're a runner or a lifter. Yep, never ever do deadlifts again. It's just going to blow your back out. You're going to have nerve problems and then we're going to have to operate and life will never be the same again. So when that, particularly obviously when that advice is completely unfounded, and it's very rare that it is actually valid, and then the person now has got this lifelong thing stuck in the head, and eventually they cross paths with someone who's actually, knows a bit more than that very basic and outdated information. Is like, no, running's the best thing to keep your knees healthy, strong, fit, almost rebuild the cartilage to an extent. And they're like, what? But how? I've been told I haven't run for 10 years and that was the only thing I loved and cared about back then. How can this be? And they've literally been disabled, never been able to run for all those years because of that one idea and bit of advice.
And now we're taking them away from something that is healthy for them.
Yep.
And we're moving away from performance and just basic health as well.
Fear avoidance.
That's it.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure anyone listening to this can, if you just picture that for a moment, if you've been told you can never do what brings you joy and what you love and what you're passionate about, or work towards whatever your aspirations, dreams and goals are, you can never do that again because of this physical problem. And if you do, it's going to stuff you up for the rest of your life. Imagine how miserable that's going to feel and how debilitating and restricted it's going to pull back your engagement socially. You're going to have to change your whole identity, find something else. Like, it is a horrible mental and physical experience to go through.
And I guess you would, in what you both do, you would need to find the balance between obviously assessing the issue, validating the patient, their pain, their experience, whilst also finding a way to empower them and move them back into performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to it's tricky. You've got to do it all. You've got to balance like their mind, their psychology, their environmental and social situation, and physically what's going on, biologically what's going on, nervous system wise what's going on. There's a lot of moving pieces, and to try and figure that out and help people feel, okay, I can see a way forward. I can see how this is going to help. I'm bought into this process to help me achieve the results that I'm wanting to do. It's just a tricky process.
And like language and the conversations, in my opinion at least, and some of, I guess, this has changed over the years from when I first started just, as a massage therapist, like, from some mentors of mine and stuff that I've kind of really taken on board a lot of what they've done in their careers. They hold true to language being and talking being the most powerful thing. And I always tell patients, like, the reality is if I could only do one thing with you, it would be to talk to you. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be to like massage or do this or that. It would literally be to just have a conversation, actually help you understand things. That's the most important.
100%.
And I actually picked up a lot of that working like with you for my early injuries that are probably the first ones ever. Like a lot of it was probably like less traditional than what I'd been used to growing up. Just go in, sore knee, massage your quad and see you later, strap it up and hopefully you're all good, book in if you're not. Like, whereas you, it was more like, nah, man, like this is like, we spent a good amount of time understanding what was going on, what the plan was to get better, why it was happening, what we needed to do. And it was just a lot of it was just like chatting, some obviously rehab and stuff was part of it, but the main thing and most of the value there and the thing that makes the patient, like myself at the time, feel confident was having that kind of, that conversation.
Absolutely. Like conceptually to me, that's coaching. You can't have someone fix you. That's the harsh reality of things. Like we're all responsible for our own health, well-being and fitness. No one else can do that for you. So if you're seeing a really good clinician practitioner, their job isn't to fix you, is to help empower you to fix yourself. And like you said, the way that we can help people is through that coaching and behavior change process to set them up for success, to know what to do and when, and what to modify and not do, and how to go about things. But we can't actually do the exercise for them or walk their life and do their journey for them. They have to do that. So just like you said, if there's one tool that you could have as a clinician, it's being a really effective coach. Because if you're not effective, they're not going to do anything different. You're going to be stuck in the same situation, and then the results just won't come.
It's awesome. I think everything you've been saying and your views and everything that you've learned, it differs heavily from the traditional model. Was this the more you learnt, the more you realised, this traditional way is not the way? Was this a driving force behind starting your own business? I guess it was. There's like two parts to what sort of led me to starting my own business. One was I sort of felt like I was getting to a bit of a crossroads in my career where I needed something new, like more growth, more development, something to move my way forward clinically as a clinician. So I did actually look back then at doing the sort of masters and titling process to become a Australian Physiotherapy Association, like registered specialist physio or whatever. But that just, it didn't make sense to me, because at the end of the day, you still do the same thing and patients choose who they go and see. So I'm sorry, APA, but I think that pathway's got a bit more maturing to do. Unlike becoming a surgeon or a specialist medical professional, where you have more roles and responsibilities. It's just not there yet in the profession. So that ruled out. So then I was looking at doing actually a PhD, going back into the research, becoming real specialised at something, because that would certainly like increase your professional perception amongst peers, and generally then they'll refer more people to you. But the challenge with the PhD is it makes you, or it's really designed to
get you to be an expert at one little like tiny little niche field. And frankly, for me, that's just boring. I like a bit more variety and figuring out lots of different issues rather than only the patella tendon in basketballers. That seems a bit incorrect, but like a bit too simple to me.
Yeah.
I like the challenge of the variety.
Yeah, I'll be the exact same as you. I wouldn't want to niche down into just one standard common area of the body that gets hurt and just be the guy to go to for that. Like it would just be monotonous.
Exactly. And you do need those professionals for when stuff does start to get really nuanced and specific and picky. But that's where you also need really good generalists to help identify when that's actually worthwhile, because otherwise you'll go and see someone and if all they've got, sort of bashing on surgeons a little bit here, they've only got a hammer, they're looking for that nail to hit in. So if that's their only skill set and sort of tool in the tool bag, of course you're going to get recommended that when they see that it's valid. But to link back to, I suppose where I was going in my sort of decision point in my career, an opportunity popped up at Strength Culture back in the day. Thank you to
RIP.
Yeah, that's it. Jamie Smith and Charlie. I don't even know if I don't think Jamie Buzz or Dids were even part of it at that level back then. But an opportunity popped up to sort of go off on my own, and I had all these ideas of, well, I think I can improve the process and our profession of how we do things to get better results and outcomes for patients, because I just heard way too many stories from patients of, I've encountered this problem, I've been told this thing, and done that and this and that. And I'm like, we can fix all of that. So I was like, you know what? That sounds like a challenging problem to solve. I'll bloody do it. That's what's led me to, run my own business.
Just the old stomping grounds.
That's it.
Charlie and Dids weren't there, but actually no, Buzz and Dids weren't there.
Yeah.
But you and me were.
Yeah, exactly.
Say were you there?
Yeah. Were you even training at, you were training out of,
Hammer House.
No, even before that, you were training at Sandy, weren't you?
I
Back then, or
worked
even
there
PT?
for a bit. I worked there, PT there for a bit.
Yeah, because I think we crossed paths like in the gym
Yeah.
while I was probably working at Sandy too.
I came and saw you as well.
Yeah,
for something. Can't remember
That's
what.
a throwback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally 10 plus years, I would say.
Yeah.
A long time ago. But yeah, I think as well, like, I guess your experience, your crossroads, and moving through, wanting to sort of help a broader range of people in, the strength culture opportunity, all of that, would have been also the birth of how you now do things compared to, I'm guessing, what you, the guidelines you had to work within before when you were working under someone else. How does that differ? I mean, we know, but I think it's a good topic to speak about, because there's some massive differences, and it's not 30-minute sessions and see you next week.
Yeah, like what do you think sets you apart, or your business apart and your model apart from the traditional model?
That's a really good question. I think about this all the time because it's really hard to answer. You almost need to experience it to sort of understand. But there's sort of conceptually, there's sort of like two prongs to how we've built things. One is to set the clinician up for overwhelming success, and the other part is to, as obviously as part of that, it helps the patient, but is to help mitigate all of the common pitfalls and issues of standard approaches and the way the industry typically does things from the patient's angle. So we've literally built a very thorough, comprehensive system that tries to tick all of those boxes, helps give the patients an amazing experience that drives results, as well as makes it as foolproof as possible to pick up on all of the things that the patient needs and help deliver and coach that through. So we do start with like 1 hour long initials, but even the session almost starts before then. We've got a very comprehensive intake form, which a lot of specialty medical professions do as well, because when you get to that level, trying to dive into the details, you don't have the time to spend 3 hours with someone. So to keep it cost effective, we use the form to pre-screen all of the basic and standard questions that you'd normally be asked over 3, 4, 20 or 30 minute sessions, so that in that hour we're getting to the bottom of what's going on, why is this going on, and how can we help you, how can you help you get the results you're looking for and stay doing what you love and get back to great health and performance.
There is nothing worse than walking in and they're going, nice to meet you, what do you need help with today?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, are you serious?
And you just need the context and you need the background information. And obviously you've found a really effective way of screening that and getting that done before. And also, I mean, your consultation process, I'm sure, is, very refined as well. So you know exactly what things you need to ask and how to actually best utilize the time as well.
Absolutely.
There are like psychological questions through that. There are pre-injury questions. There are post-injury questions. There are, what you do for work, like what a day looks like for you, what your activity's like. It is in depth. And so you've almost sort of met Jason before Jason's walked in, right? I think that's like that's nowhere near, the standard is nowhere near that.
Absolutely.
No chance.
Like the standard typically, and you taught from uni some like basic sort of questions and things to go through and sort of boxes to tick. But when you're trying to cram all of that into like a 20-minute, 30-minute sort of initial session where you're going in completely blind, someone comes in, I've got shoulder pain, or whatever it might be, and then you've got to sort of weave your way through that. The expectation typically is you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes of treatment. During that time, you're often just talking fluffy rubbish that gets nowhere or doesn't really do anything too meaningful for them. Lucky enough to throw away some, banded exercises or some foam roller stuff at the end. All right, come back in like a couple of days. I'll see you 3 times this week, 2 times next week. There's so many, from a clinician's perspective, which the patient's not even aware of, by the way. This is one of the biggest gripes I have, is you're making so many shortcuts and assumptions around what's going on and potential answers to questions that could completely send you in a different way. That was one of the frustrations I was having as a clinician, is it's not until session 3 or 4 that we have that aha moment as the patient and as the clinician of like, oh, if only I was told this right back at the start. Now we've got to course correct and start going that way instead of this way. And those last like couple of sessions and weeks or whatever it is, they haven't been quite all for nothing, but it's just delayed everything now. Now you've got an extra month or 2 months worth of work to do because we missed something.
You're all about efficiency.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So it can be, admittedly, like some feedback we occasionally get is like, wow, that was like too much, a lot. But there's been
Which part?
around the questions that we...
Heaps. But if
I think it also
good
comes down
reason.
to just a misunderstanding. Like that, if people haven't been exposed to them, their only exposure to physiotherapy care or just general care is a couple questions, like an intake form that's like first name, last name, occupation, bang. I guess the really comprehensive questionnaire and all that kind of thing that Dan has for his patients. Dan would love to not have to read all that stuff. Like, it would
wait. Let him speak on this because I think you'd love it.
That's right. No, keep...
I'll ask you, like, if there was a world in which you could get the same amount of information somehow that would help you do your job to the same degree without having to go and read through all the questions that you put on that form, would you prefer that?
It would make it so much easier.
Yeah, correct.
But the reality of healthcare is it's complex. There's lots of detail and you just don't know until you ask some of these things. So it can feel frustrating for some people. Like, why are you asking me this? This is pointless. It doesn't apply to me. You don't know if it applies or if it's relevant until it's been asked. So and the reality is, like, it is so, you can oversimplify things, I suppose. I'll start with this angle. You can oversimplify things, and that is going to work for a lot of people. But the issues that can cause for the people where things are a bit more complex and are going to be stubborn and harder to resolve, I think we can shortcut that process for them. And quite often, those are the ones that matter more and get more bang for buck out of great healthcare, rather than being strung along and nothing works. They see someone else, and stuff is overlooked and stuff is missed. The number of times that we get people coming in, they've already seen 5 or 6 people, and we've already seen in the form in advance of, oh, that's interesting, I need to dive into that question or that bit of information further. And then they'll say, geez, I've never had anyone ask me that before. And it changes the entire perspective and direction that they're taking. And then they get miracle results within weeks, just because you've got that extra bit of context that can make a really big difference to their care and their results. So that's why we do it. It will piss off some people, but we're okay if it annoys a few people, because as clinicians, we want to help people. And we know the best way to do that is by having as much information as we can, trying to filter what's useful and immediately important to sort of leverage to the person's success. But if we don't have that, like, it's going to be another 3-4 sessions, and we may miss stuff and we may get off course.
It's in the patient's best interest, in my opinion, that they, do that whether they like it or not, because otherwise you're just asking those questions in the session. It's just taken away from their, I guess, time.
That's it. Yeah. What they put in is what they get out of it. And I suppose something we've tried to build with our systems and processes, if it was like a family member or a loved one that you want, the best for them, you don't want to miss anything. How can we build that service? What does that look like? And that's what I think we've gotten really close to nailing and refining, but also making it still like accessible and affordable for people. And also taking some experience from my elite, I suppose you could sort of say, like elite or like professional paid sport work that I have done, where you've got athletes who are on contracts or being paid per game or whatnot. What can we learn from that side of the industry with the higher frequency of touch point and care, and introduce that into a private practice paying setting. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
What else? You guys do that differs from the traditional model?
Yeah, so beyond the comprehensiveness of the sort of the intake form, and then sort of what we were alluding to, our clinical system and process, like we've built a system that means we're not doing cookie cutter things, but it's giving us guiding principles of how to not miss things, how to prioritize what's the most useful and impactful information, where do the biggest needle movers move for or lie for the patient, how to identify them. And then we've got a whole management process around the strategy, the tactics, the behaviors and things for people to know what to do to get pain to settle, or what not to do to stop pain from being flared up and annoyed, as well as a very comprehensive like rehab library as well to help guide, like, how do we always get progression and keep moving forwards.
So you don't just like do stick figure drawings.
Oh, no, I miss those days. No one really wants to see my stick figures anyway. But no, we're really calculated with what we prescribe, and all of it has a much deeper meaning than we'd even explain within a consult, because we don't have time to teach you our degree and how to do our job, as well as what you need to do. But the point of that is if you're doing a calculated and precise thing, you should be getting a relatively calculated and precise result. And if you're not, then there might be a bit of information that's being missed. And if you do, then great, you're on track. You know where you're heading and where you're going to get to. So we have very strong processes around that. Also, we provide all of that, because it can be a lot of information, in a very detailed but quite like digestible and simple report, so that you can always refer back to that later, rather than your stick figures of, okay, well, this is what I do if my pain flares up, or this is what I do when things are feeling good, and how I can push and progress further. These are the stuff that I can do. This is how to modify my training. These are my exercises and my frequency. You've got a blueprint of what to do, when to do, but because of our process in the consultation, we've also made that very integratable and tangible for you to actually do. without it being overwhelming.
Yeah.
And great for coaches as
Yeah.
well. Like wonderful of, you know, I would recommend this, or, you know, it's collaborative, it's clear. You've got, you know, a pathway forwards. It's, you know, sometimes I've dealt with practitioners that almost get defensive or, you know, weirded out that you want to talk to them as if it's like, sorry, I know what I'm doing, when in reality, you know, and that sometimes they kind of talk down to you and things like that, like you're just a PT, when again you've got the same goal for the client.
That's it.
So yeah,
I think it probably just comes from a little bit of like an insecurity around the fact that they probably know that they're not doing everything that they can do for that patient. So when you get probe those questions like, oh, like do you have a program for the patient? How long do we need to avoid this for? And they're almost having to question themselves and be like, shit, I haven't thought about this. Let's get defensive. At least that's been my experience. So.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that too. But conceptually, in my mind, I try to frame it quite simple. Like the patient or the client that you're working with, like they're your boss. They're coming to you and paying you for a service to get a certain result or a certain outcome to help them with something. If you're not on board with that, then you're just robbing them of their time and their money, and in healthcare, their health, their well-being, their fitness. So when they're, you know, paying for a coach and paying for a healthcare practitioner or rehab person or whoever it is, it should be a collaborative approach of, hey, they've assembled this team now. They want you guys to all help them achieve these outcomes. If there's collaboration within them and with the actual patient or client, that's how you're going to get best results. So when, like you said, when people don't communicate or are really hard to contact or get unnecessarily defensive and are not helpful, that's almost another red flag for the patient or the client of like, okay, my coach is having a hard time getting in touch with this clinician. They're not communicating anything. They're not giving any guidance here. It's like, go see someone else, because there's better out there. There's not a standard that you should accept or pay for with your dollar.
Yeah, I've experienced it. If they respond,
even recently.
Well, yeah. But just to, I guess, simplify what you said, and you can correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but in what a traditional model would sort of, in 2 hours, you know, they'd see 4 clients, patients,
more,
and in 2 hours, and in 2 hours with you guys, it would be, you know, the hour session plus the pre and the post, and you know that. We didn't actually state it, but an email with a comprehensive outline of what to do, what not to do, your exercises, video tutorials, all that sort of stuff.
Check-ins in between appointments.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like that's all the other stuff. Like we've only scratched the surface. Like I've been refining this for my whole clinical career, and like I said, I'm obsessive over it. So how can I tweak and change that? Oh, that's a problem that someone's encountered. How can we make sure that never happens again?
I've seen your spreadsheet. It's like a freaking app.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's like a freaking full-on computer app, like desktop app.
Yeah.
Like click, click, click. It's like, look at these things. Click, click, click. Now look at these things. It's like...
Exactly.
Yeah, built by those hands.
Yeah, so with that, like you said, we... that report that we delivered to people, it's like someone... paying someone to like write up a program for them. You need to get a bit of information to know, you know, what they want to achieve, and look at, you know, how they're moving and whatnot to understand where to start. But then it takes you time to think through, okay, what's the program going to look like? What's the prescriptions that I'm going to do? I'm not just going to give them a generic cookie cutter thing. You can't in healthcare. Well, I suppose you can, but
don't expect anything amazing.
Yeah, well, that's it. If you do a generic program, you're gonna get generic results. Like as simple as that.
Yeah.
But which can also sometimes end up working against you. So not just being like a neutral or an average, stagnant kind of effect. It can actually be a negative effect.
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest issue. Like if it was just the issue of like, oh, you're probably gonna get average results. It's kind of like, all right, whatever. But the fact that it can actually do more harm and set you back further, that's where people, I think, really kind of, you know, cut themselves short.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes a bit difficult to conceptualize that, but like biology doesn't stop. It doesn't like wait and sleep for you. It's always moving and changing and evolving. Your body's constantly trying to repair or bring itself back to baseline or adapt to the world and the environment that you're in. It doesn't stop, and you've got direct influence over that. So if you influence it poorly or badly, or even just in an average manner, that can sometimes, like you said, it can delay things. It can make things now take a lot longer. Now things are weaker, things are more fragile, they're more likely to come back. You're more likely to have psychological barriers and concerns and worries and holding back and avoiding things, and movement patterns get changed. Compensation sort of creeps in. Bad habits creep in. You have to unlearn these things and relearn the good stuff. It can compound really, really quickly.
But that's if you actually get the chance to see someone who can enlighten you with that positive perspective as well. Otherwise, you're just going to have all these disabilities, as you mentioned before, and be debilitated by them.
That's right.
I want to talk about even just an example for myself. When I hurt my back, it was actually during a powerlifting comp a couple of years ago at Strength Culture, and it really hurt. It was during a deadlift rep. And I had all these people talking to me about their experience, with their back pain and what happened to them, how they couldn't move, and it started spasming and whatever. And I literally got so afraid, and I just wasn't moving. And everyone was saying, get up. And I'm like, no, I can't. And it was because of all these stories that they were telling me. And then you happen to walk in the door, thank goodness. And I was like, Dan, I just hurt my back. And you're like, all right, that's all right. We'll do some basic testing. We obviously weren't in a consultation. And then you were pretty much getting me to move, hinge. I was bending over, touching my toes. And the way that you kind of built my confidence so quickly was crazy, because it just went to show how much of an impact the stories and the psychology has on your, experience with pain.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, this is a whole nother can of worms.
I know.
Another podcast, but just like you said, that is such an amazing story, because it really highlights the impact of our sort of societal expectations, beliefs, and stories and other things that we've sort of seeing is believing from other people. Another sort of classic example of that, which a lot of people might relate to, is when your parents have had some kind of injury or ailment that now they've just been accepted. Oh, it's just my bad back or my bad knee. I've had that for decades. Hey kid, you're destined for greatness too, in terms of your knee exploding on you. I wouldn't run. It's going to wear your joints out. And these stories and beliefs become an ingrained part of ourselves and are always in the back of our head, causing worry and fear and influencing our behavior and what exercise we do and don't do, which quite often are just built upon just incorrect information that's going to make things worse for you. So getting really good information around, okay, what does this mean and what can I do, or how do I go through this? It can shift that belief, sort of you experienced in that quick time of this is possible, or I didn't think of it that way before, or maybe what I used to think isn't quite true, and there is actually some hope and some optimism that I can do X, Y, and Z. You know what? That's worth going for. I'm going to try. I'm going to find out. That's where you can get those shifts of the mindset that lead to almost miracle results.
It's almost like that tug of war between optimism and pessimism. And it's all these things, things that you hear from people that have had bad experiences before and don't really understand, I guess, the biology and stuff behind it and all that kind of thing are going to be yanking this way. And you have clinicians like yourself that are yanking you the other way, giving you all this understanding around it and actually helping you feel more confident. And if you get the right, I guess, opinions and advice and have the right conversation with the right people, the optimism will win, and it'll help you actually feel confident and get you back quicker, better, all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Once... And that's why I sort of love the idea of the student mindset. If you keep yourself sort of open to the possibilities and explore the what if this is possible? What if I can achieve that? And then you start, all right, I'm going to try working through this process for a bit, and you start to see those little wins sort of happen, and that sort of expands your horizons of possibility, and be you know what, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. And we're seeing, I think, a lot of that now on social media, where you're having people in their I think just recently, in the last few weeks, actually, was like a 93-year-old just broke the marathon world record, ran like a 4-hour 30-minute marathon at like 90-something years old. That level of longevity of performance is possible. And mind you, this person, they only started running at like the age of like 70-something too.
Wow.
But if
That's
you,
wild.
yeah, it's crazy. But if you've got those ideas stuck in your head of, oh, you know, my dad had bad knees and running's going to wear out my joints and this isn't possible, or I've got to be really careful with these exercises because it'll stuff up my back or whatever it might be, they're self-limiting. And it's amazing what the body is possible of, but sort of an expression is where the mind goes, the body follows. So if you don't get the mind right, and this links back to what you originally said about like the conversations and the coaching process and helping people shift the way they think about things and what to do and what not to do. If you can't get the mind right, then it's really hard for the body to sort of follow along in that process and make the results happen.
Yeah, I feel like
I'm just I got to duck out. I got a patient. Dan, you're the man. You'll be here after. Are you heading off?
Yeah, I'll be hanging around a bit.
All right, I'll probably see you.
Oh yeah. Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus is a weapon, by the way. Like his professional title doesn't do him justice. He's such a brilliant clinician. So big ups to Marcus. He's not a Mayo. He's
Something else.
yeah. I've been thinking about this. Like, I feel like and this is sort of back to sort of that expectations and mindset sort of thing. Like, you're like, oh, I'm going to see a physio. I'm going to see a Mayo, whatever it is. There's already these pre-held beliefs and expectations of what that is and what that looks like. And sometimes even that just holds people back. Sometimes I think maybe we just need to burn it all down and start again and just come up with like a new professional title for this more modern approach that you know, people. It's good. I'm seeing more of this these days, but got to be optimistic. Got to keep our minds open.
Well, just like you can get through, I guess, school to be a physio and to be an osteo and a chiro and a myo, you can still come out the other end shit. And so at least the way that I look at it is it's all the PD outside, all the professional development you do outside of that, that it's not your title, it's your brain, and it's how you build your brain and your knowledge, and that's the most important thing. And the whole, I guess, is that there are just too many shit ones out there.
Yeah.
That
rotten apple spoils it for the bunch.
That's right. And there's shit PTs and there's shit in every field,
industry,
right?
Yeah.
I think what I want to talk about with that though is that it's so challenging because maybe what you identify as having success with a patient, that may even mean that you no longer need to see them, or you've completed the plan that you had set out, or they're actually back to not just the level that they were prior to seeing you, but also even better. But maybe for another practitioner where maybe they have been on the same banded exercise and they've finally graduated to, I don't know, moving with dumbbells or something like that. But in the patient's mind, okay, they've graduated from here to here, so there's success there, but it's maybe just a little. It's an illusion of what is actually successful. So, I guess when we speak about getting results with patients, like I'm sure these practitioners would see some progression and some results, but yeah, the actual level of that is very different.
Oh, absolutely, and it's. As a patient, it's really difficult to sort of screen and understand like what it should look like and what it should feel like, because you haven't spent the 5 to 7 years of education to get the tip of the iceberg to even be able to deliver that to someone. So it's really challenging from a filtering point of view in terms of like, are they just pulling one over here or not? But maybe a little bit of insight is generally rehab should feel difficult and challenging. And what I mean by that is it should be physically demanding. You should be getting fatigued, getting a burning feeling in certain muscles and areas. Movement should be slowing down. It should be difficult to maintain the technique that you're trying to do. It should feel like tough training. Because if it's not, unless they've been very specific and very clear around, no, this is a skills-based thing, you're metaphorically trying to land the dart on the bullseye every time. So you want high quality, very sharp, not fatigued practice to be able to execute on that. If it's not a skills practice, then it should be really difficult and challenging. Because the reality is, with exercise, if we're not pushing it hard enough, we're not giving our body the challenge that it needs to respond, adapt, and grow to improve, and we're just leaving it to time and chance that our body's going to do the right things, and we know that it doesn't. Unfortunately, it'll do the baseline, it'll do the minimum, but anything extra than that, not going to happen.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of dog shit in my time. Like, you wouldn't go lift a 1 kilo dumbbell to grow your biceps, and then you see people, it's like, oh, I've got this 1 hour daily stretching routine to do, and using this freaking band to do ER. It's like just hard at the end, easy at the start, and it's like...
Well, it's kind of like in lifting, right? Like if someone wants to, you know, grow their glutes or their quads or whatever it is, you could do something really light and repetitive and you get that sensation. But we know that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's stimulative and it's actually going to move them closer towards their goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's a weird internal debate in the profession as well around talking about, you know, what gets results, and generally by results they're talking about pain getting less and getting back into normal function. But to me and other, I suppose, more performance-orientated clinicians, just getting back to the basics and baseline, that should be a given. We also need to think about, right, longevity from a health and fitness point of view. So how do we get physically stronger? How do we get more powerful? How do we build our bodies up to be more robust and resilient, so that not just in the next year or 2 years, but a decade or 2 decades or later on in life, like we're still breaking, you know, marathon records at the age of 90, because that's just such a, at least for me and for many people you ask about, like, would you rather be, you know, enjoying life at that point where you can get out, still run, still exercise, still travel the world, still see your friends, family, do all these things, whatever it might be? Or would you prefer to be stuck at home, you know, mostly, you know, couch bound at the age of 60, not able to walk too far because your knees start to hurt, can't play with your kids, can't play with your grandkids? I feel it's a fairly clear cut preference
definitely.
there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, you said, you've got to push the body to a level where it's going to create that change. Otherwise, we grow through challenge.
For sure. I think you'd need to find that the art of essentially juggling that, managing pain, managing the flare-ups, holding technique, like all of these things. So you, again, need a skilled practitioner to guide you through. So, yeah. I do want to actually just maybe touch on like more of a specific, pretty generic example of, you know, someone coming into a clinic presenting with back pain, and maybe they're told that they've got tight hips, weak glutes, weak core. How often do you think that would actually be the case?
That is like the stereotypical sort of example, and what people are told getting out of there as well. It's sort of like a half-truth. So there's some degrees of truth in it, but it's often not presented very well to the patients, that can be misleading and slow them down, or even potentially be even harmful in some cases where they get the ideas stuck in their head. And the problem often that I see lies in, they make these claims of it's this, this, and this, but they don't actually assess and prove that that's even a factor. It's very easy to test if the hips are actually tight. Just move the hip around. Yeah. If it doesn't have the same range of motion as it used to, and it's a lot stiffer and harder to move through that range, then I think it's reasonable to call it stiff. But the number of times that a clinician will actually do that before saying you've got stiff hips, it rarely happens. Same thing with like weak glutes and a weak core. They don't do a sit-up test or a side plank sort of test type thing and really see how strong things are, or look at your glute strength through hip extension or abduction or whatever it might be. They just jump to these conclusions, often from like just poking and prodding things. but not doing any meaningful tests to really get to the bottom of what's actually going on or not. Now, the half-truth of it is very commonly say with low back pain does commonly cause the glutes to underperform, and it can make the hips, the pelvis, that whole like lower sort of trunk abdominal region tighter or stiffer to move out of a protective response.
From the nervous system.
Exactly. And these are quick, generally protective changes that the body's going to do to try and help make sure that you're not going to do further harm or injury to yourself, more out of worry and concern than really out of you are actually going to do harm, which is actually in most low back cases very, very rare and unlikely. So we can't, in those initial assessments, always make the conclusion of your back issue is because your glutes are weak or your core's weak. Even if you assess them, we might be able to assess and say, hey, at this point in time, yeah, your glutes aren't testing as strong as what we'd expect normally, or your core seems to be underperforming, or the hips are maybe a little bit stiff compared to your normal. But that might just be a protective response. Let's work on these things first to keep you doing what you love and building back towards your goals, as well as managing the pain and helping that settle down and the nervous system calm down. And then as you're through that process and feeling better, moving better, performing better, let's revisit. Are the glutes still weak? Is the core still weak? Are the hips still stiff? And then you might find some interesting things of, hey, you know what? The core's nice and strong. Hips aren't stiff. But yeah, that glute, that's still not quite where we would expect. Maybe there's some merit to that one needs to be strengthened up a little bit more, because that might have been part of the factor or the reason why you hurt yourself with a deadlift in the first place. But you're not always going to know that in the first session, and that's where you need to be a bit of a detective to go through that process, look at things with a good degree of scrutiny, actually assess and test. Otherwise, you're just making like guesses and assumptions, which could plant those negative seeds and ideas or beliefs that leads towards more permanent, like self-imposed disability and avoidance of things.
Yep.
My most hated is you've got dominant quads. Like what?
Yeah.
I gotta stop training quads. They're too dominant.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard it too many times. But I think we could belt on forever here, Dan, and I would love to. But I think we'll wrap it up. But I think people listening to this are probably going to have the burning question of how do I find a good practitioner? And I think I can maybe go out on a limb here on your behalf and say that you can message Dan, and Dan can give you an insight into, who to go to or even help you out along the way. Because I think like after this conversation, it's very evident that you spend a lot of time, you have a lot of knowledge, and you don't fix people, they fix themselves.
Yeah. I help them fix themselves.
You help them get the result that they need, and we vouch for that as well. So I think to sort of wrap this up, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah.
And can they get in touch with you and ask you and get some information about?
Yeah, more than happy to help. And you probably find this, I know it's a little bit of an aside to wrap things up, but you find this almost in any industry. Like, great people in the industry tend to know all the other great people in the industry, because they all sort of like flock together. They're going to the same courses. They're talking the same sort of like ideas to try and push their professions forwards. They're trying to, do things as well with their businesses and industry to also, be at the bleeding edge of all of this. So it's a pretty tight circle. Like, it's no coincidence that all the good people, like, I'm like, hey, it's you again at this professional development course. It's you again. And you start chatting and having these conversations and networking. So if you reach out, I suppose you can reach me on Instagram, so Evolve Sports Medicine. We've also got our website, evolvesportsmedicine.com. My personal Instagram at Dan Godeassi Physio. But you just Google us, find us, reach out to the team at HUSLA. Good people know good people. So if you're not quite sure, just reach out and ask, particularly if you've experienced any of those red flags or heard some of those things where there hasn't been any assessment, or anything that just seems off, feels off, is a bit confusing, and you start to have that question in your back of the head. Or even if it's what if, could there be more? Could I be moving faster? I'm making progress, but it feels steady and I'm comfortable with this, but is there more? Just ask.
Yeah, it's a massive thumbs up from us. I just realised I've been saying your last name wrong.
Honestly,
10
I
years.
say it the very Aussie
Godeassi.
bogan way. Yeah.
How do you say it traditionally?
I believe it's Godeassi.
Yeah, I've
Okay,
been saying it
that's how we
right.
say
it.
You're
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
exactly.
You've been saying your own name
exactly. Exactly.
But guys, listeners, thanks for listening, tuning in, supporting. We appreciate it very much, more than you guys know. And without you guys, this would be nothing. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Dan, thank you for your time.
Thank you for
I
having
reckon
me
we'll
so
have to
much.
do-
Thank you for your impact on the industry.
I'm trying my best.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I think we'll have to do a part 2.
We gotta do a
because
part- I'm forward
my
to
brain has so many questions.
Yeah, I got so much I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. But thank you, Dan.
But thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It's been awesome. Thank you, guys.